We'll call to order the City of Douglasville City Council Committee meeting for tonight. Our invocation will be done by our own Miss Emily. After the invocation, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand for the invocation.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity to come together tonight, God. Thank you so much for all of our elected officials, and please be with them this evening as they conduct business, city business, Lord, and please give them wisdom to lead our community. Please help us all get home safely this evening. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem, for leading us in the pledge, and Ms. Emily Hardaway, our Outreach Coordinator, for leading us in the invocation. I will go over just a few protocol issues for the evening, and then we'll get into the meeting. I'd like to welcome you to the legislative work session of the Douglasville City Council. My name is Rochelle Robinson. I'm Mayor of the City of Douglasville. This is a work session where agenda items are presented for discussion only, and no official action will be taken on these items until our meeting of the 20th of December, which is next Monday at 6 p.m. If the business that you're here for is not listed as an agenda item, there will be ample time under the agenda item comments from citizens and delegates for you to discuss your business. Just a few protocol issues I'd like to go over with you so we'll all be on the same page, and then we'll get into our agenda, which is printed outside if you like a paper agenda, or there is an electronic virtual one up here. So I ask that you please keep your comments and presentations on a professional level, dealing with the facts that are important for this governing body to make our decisions. We will not accept a personal attack on any individual or group of individuals. You will receive a warning from the chair, and if you deviate from this requirement, a second deviation will result in you discontinuing to speak. We'll turn your microphone off. Only one person speaking at a time. Please do not applaud or react to speakers. Speak from the audience, cheer, or carry on conversations when you're here to speak at the podium. I'll remind you that we're only required to accept public comments during the required public hearings. And if you have a cell phone or any electronic device, please put those in silent mode or turn those off until after the meeting so they will not be disruptive. Now, this is how the meeting will be handled. The committee chairperson of that committee will call the person forward, an applicant, to present. That will be your opportunity to present your information to myself and council members. There are 20 minutes for those in opposition of an item and 20 minutes for those in favor, and each person has 5 minutes to speak. If you have any printed material, please give that to our city clerk, Ms. Vicki Acker, to my right. This is not a debate or question and answer format. It's just really here for us to hear the information, deliberate, and make our decision next Monday. So I believe that's all that we have. And when you come to the podium, please give us your name and address for the record so that we'll have that on file. And that's all. So we will follow the agenda. And our first committee for legislative work session tonight is Economic Development Committee, and that's chaired by Mayor Pro Tem Terry Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have no business under the Economic Development Committee at this time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. We'll move on then to item number 6, which is Finance Committee, and that's chaired by Councilmember Mark Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome.
Finance has 4 items tonight. We will start with item A, authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with Croy Engineering, LLC for professional engineering and design services for the construction of a shared use path extending along State Route 92/Dallas Highway and East Strickland Street from the new State Route Highway 92 alignment to the proposed McCarley Street Railroad crossing. Ms. McCowan is here to help us with that. We've had a discussion in our committee meetings, and we will continue that with any additional information. Thank you, Ms. McCowan.
Absolutely. And at your pleasure, I did print out some locational maps, so if you would allow it, I'd love to get that to you at this time.
That'll be fine. Thank you.
That was fast.
Just so we have some geographic reference.
I might be a little out of breath.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I know it. Copier was moving fast.
And so I apologize for the print job. It kind of did something funky on me, but, you know, technology. But if you do flip it back and forth, you can see the location, which is in the New Horizons community. It starts, of course, on the McCurley Street Railroad Crossing, and it connects right there at that new project. Then it travels up Dallas Highway, connecting Brown Street, and, of course, connecting to the new 92. So what you have before you is a contract for mayor and council to consider for the authorization for preliminary engineering for Croy Engineering is the selected partner for this project. We did talk about how the cost estimate did increase from $250,000 to the $997,000 and some change. That does have some cost difference, which we can attribute to the geotech evaluation, the 70 parcel for right-of-way acquisition, as well as that connection to the shared use path, and then, of course, the roundabout that you see in front of you, which is proposed at possibly at the Stewart Middle School, I guess you can call that an intersection. And that is what we are attributing the cost to. The local federal split is $199,000 locally that we would be on the hook for, and then the federal is about right under $800,000. We do have a representative from Croy Engineering who will be our project manager on the project, should you have any questions for staff or him.
Thank you, Ms. McCowan. As I said, we have discussed this earlier in our committee meetings. I will open the floor for any additional comments, or if anyone has a question for the Croy Engineering staff. They've been so kind as to come forward to be here with us tonight. So I'll open the floor for any comment or question. Anyone? Ms. McCowan, thank you for giving us this report and also for the visual that you've provided. That does put things into perspective for the project, and I'm glad to hear that we do have the funds made available to us with that very large increase in scope. I'm assuming that the roundabout itself would have been the major contributor to the cost increase, or one of the major contributors that I don't think was taken into consideration initially, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. No questions or comments. We'll take this up on Monday night then.
Okay,
Thank you very much. Moving on to item B, authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with LMI Systems LLC for the replacement of NDAA and FCC compliant Tyco Illustra cameras and to upgrade those cameras. Mr. Sam Jenkins. It's a lot of initials, Mr. Jenkins.
A lot of initial. Hello, Madam Mayor and Council. Sam Jenkins, 6695 Church Street. So we're going to talk about this in executive session, but basically we have some cameras that we want to replace here in the conference center. Mainly dealing with NDAA, that's the National Defense Authorization Act. So they all federal acts, or why we want to replace the dealing with security, cybersecurity. So that's why we asking to replacement of the cameras that we do have here.
Okay, questions, comments, anyone?
We are reserving the discussion in executive session because of the nature of this item. It has something to do with cybersecurity.
I understand. Point taken. Thank you, Ms. Woodward. Thank you very much for your report. Mr. Jenkins, we'll take that up then in executive session, and then I would assume be prepared to vote on it on Monday.
Correct.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Item C, authorize the mayor to sign change order number 10 with Integrated Construction and Nobility Incorporated to install concrete abutments of the proposed bridge with the helical piers designed by a structural engineer at Willing Workers Park. Mr. Thompson?
All right, good evening. Marcus Thompson, city engineer, 6701 Church Street. All right, so basically during the design stage, due to the existing vegetation and terrain, it was pretty much difficult for us to get drilling equipment within that area to conduct the soil boring and sampling testing, to include that in the initial design. So we were finally able to get the area cleared off during construction and have our geotechnical engineer to come out and provide that testing for us. And so after that, after the investigation, they're recommending that we install the proposed pedestrian bridge with helical piers due to the weak soil profiles. And I have uploaded the drawing from our structural engineer that's with GMC. And the change order basically includes the excavation and backfill operations for the bridge abutments, the installation of the helical piers, the helical pier load testing. And please note that this item could potentially be removed, and that's based on if the proper depth is achieved along with the torque required. Sorry, I'm being a little bit technical, but yeah. And that can save us approximately $9,000, would reduce the change order amount to roughly around $20,000.
And basically, this has come about because now that we see the type of soil that we have, there's a possibility that we may have to, I guess you could say, suspend that bridge on piers.
That's correct, for
Okay.
more stabilization.
Yes, sir, I understand. Okay. Questions, comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I'm sorry, I couldn't see you.
That's right. What was the original foundation design for this? That we
That's-
changed to helical?
It was pretty, that's why I was
Just
trying
a
to mention
something
earlier, it was
basically.
pretty hard to get that design in the early design stage, because it was impossible for us to get drilling equipment to know what was underneath.
Oh, so there
they
wasn't
didn't-
even a design at that
Yeah,
point?
yes, sir.
Okay.
So we thought it would be something we'll come back to once the area was cleared.
It makes sense, especially, I guess if you've got some loose soil or loose conditions. I've worked with these before, just so, not to mean to sound like a know-it-all, but helical piers, basically, so people understand what they are, is basically taking a large screw and screwing it into the ground, and that's how you create the support condition for whatever it is. We use these exact same foundation system for the balcony on the Irish Bread Pub, because the fill was very loose. It was a lot of bad soil underneath the balcony, so that's exactly when. Those had to go down something like between 15 to 20 feet before they found solid.
Yeah, that's correct.
firm. So these things, we don't even know how deep they're going to go yet, or do we?
I think we're looking at 20 feet,
20?
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But I can confirm that
Yeah.
with you on Monday.
That's the advantage of these type of piers, because you can go down that far without having to drill, per se, because they are the drill in essence, so, okay. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Other questions, comments?
Technology.
I have one.
Yes, sir, Mr. Davis.
Marcus, you said something about the pedestrian bridge
Yes, sir.
over in the Winter Workers Park.
Yes, sir. So there's a pedestrian bridge right off where the proposed driveway and parking area is that leads into like a wooded area where we're installing like a walking trail system, like a small walking trail system.
Oh, okay, because
Yeah.
there's a house to the right over there, I believe.
Yeah, it's close towards the street, but it doesn't conflict with the house.
Okay.
It's like- and I can see.
Oh, that's fine. I'll be by there tomorrow. Take a look.
Oh, okay.
Good, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson, for that report. We'll take that up on Monday for a vote on that item.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Item D, last item under finance, authorize the sale of a 2015 Mack truck MRU 613 with front loader, VIN number 1M2AV04C9FMO 012557 to the Douglasville, Douglas County Water and Sewer Authority to authorize the mayor to sign the documents associated with the sale. Ms. Hampton?
Yes, sir. Mr. Roberts will be able to explain any technicalities about the truck. I'm not going to pretend I know anything about the Mack truck, because I don't. What I will tell you is that the Water and Sewer Authority approached myself and Mr. Roberts about the ability to service some of the disposal of some waste that they were struggling with being able to dispose of. Currently, it was just not going to be feasible for us to do that, but we do have a truck that we were willing to put out of service that we would have placed in the auction that we thought it might benefit them to utilize, and they can get into the garbage business for themselves for that disposal. I know the Water Sewer Authority Board have spoken and talked about this issue and voted to move forward with this. They believe it's something that they can handle on their own. Mr. Roberts can talk to you about why we didn't feel like we can do it, but we do feel like based on estimates and the value of the vehicle that we're providing them a fair offer for them to be able to provide this service for themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, would you mind giving us a little more information? I guess I'm a little lost as to what we would not be able to do for them as far as garbage is concerned.
So this is a front-load garbage truck that empties dumpsters, like 8-yard dumpsters.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom line is, WSA had drivers and no truck. We had a truck, no drivers.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the kind of comical side to it. So they have 3 or 4 facilities. Actually, 4 facilities are impacted throughout the county. And they were needing, without going into some of their personal issues with a contractor, they were needing some assistance with servicing those facilities as it relates to, my terms, not theirs, the residual sludge from these sewer plants. And the garbage companies didn't want to haul it anymore. And I don't necessarily, I can't get into their reasons.
Sure.
I mean, even from a technical point of view. So WSA came up with a plan to be able to deal with these items. They just didn't have a way to get it throughout the county. And they needed 3-day service at all 4 of those facilities. And it was going to take us probably 2 hours a day, 3 days a week, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul already. And then we had 2 front-load trucks that we had already marked aside for possible sale or auction. And so the timing was just right for that discussion to be had.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to at least somewhat accommodate, allow them to get into the business if we could not handle it. And that would be, you'd be going out to whatever remote treatment plant they may have outside of the city limits to do that service for them, correct?
Oh, all of it. Only one
county.
of them would have been in the city.
Okay, okay, thank you. Questions, comments? Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I serve on the Water and Sewer Authority Board of Directors, and Attorney Fowler, Joe Fowler's here as well. He's the attorney for WSA. And it really was to help, as Mr. Roberts has said, with those wastewater treatment plants, the sludge that's coming out, and sometimes there are just debris, rags, or whatever else. And so we could not get anyone else to haul that for us. It was really just with the shortage of employees. And so one of the reasons why Mr. Greg Roberts is my Employee of the Year for the City of Douglasville is based on things like this. The Executive Director, Gil Sherrow, said that he was just exceptional to work with. You know, he didn't say no. He said, let's work together and try to figure something out to make it happen. So thank you so much, Mr. Roberts. He was very complimentary of you, which we all know anyway, but it really was a win-win for the City of Douglasville to provide that service, to provide the trucks so that we can help ourselves at the Water and Sewer Authority. So thank you so much for that.
And they can control their own schedule, too.
Yes, sir.
They're not pinned to that 3 days. They can do it when it's needed.
Makes sense.
And we probably could have made more money if we put it on gov.gov, but
It's possible.
But it was nice to help
I know
our
these
neighbors.
trucks brand new are about
Yeah.
$320,000, $40,000, and there are none available. If you ordered a new one now, you wouldn't get it for probably 18 months. And the used trucks are hard to find, too.
yes,
So-
so it was unanimous vote on Tuesday at the board meeting. So thank you so much, Ms. Roberts. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Any others? All right. We'll take that up on Monday then. Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts. Madam Mayor, that's all that we have tonight under the Finance Committee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'll move on to Housing and Community Affairs Committee. I think the Vice Chair, is it you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem? Mr. Adams, that's you again? I know.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome.
Housing and Community Affairs Committee has one item tonight. Adopt a resolution to approve additional bond issuance by the Housing Authority of Douglas County in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $5 million for its private activity bonds for the purpose of carrying out the multifamily affordable housing project known as the Reserve at Douglasville, located at 7669 and 7755 Highway 92 in the city of Douglasville. Application by Housing Authority of Douglas County, care of Mr. Joe Fowler, Hartley, Rowan Fowler, PC. Good evening, Mr. Fowler. How are you?
Evening, everyone. Merry Christmas. Thanks for having me tonight. Post Office Box 49 in Douglasville. Represent the Housing Authority, and through the Housing Authority, they're issuing tax-exempt bonds for $29 million for the Reserve at Douglasville. It's an apartment complex well underway, 288 senior housing units. Because they're tax-exempt, there are certain regulations that apply. And because of what we all know as ongoing supply chain issues affecting material costs, the project is, you might have anticipated, over budget. Because it's a 4% low-income housing tax credit project, the debt must account for at least 50% of the total project costs. Who knows who came up with that rule, but that's the rule. So to meet the debt threshold and complete the project as originally planned, it's necessary for the Reserve to borrow additional funds, $5 million. The Housing Authority has not pledged its full faith and credit. The city's credit is not implicated at all. It's a revenue bond project, tax-exempt revenue bond project, so that the rents that are paid by the tenants goes to pay off the bonds. But to meet those needs and to cover the additional costs, they have to issue $5 million in additional debt. To do that, there has to be a hearing conducted before a hearing officer. That's under the regulations under the Tax Equity Fiscal Responsibility Act. It's called a TEFRA hearing. There was one conducted in January of 2020 that later was presented to the City Council and approved for that debt to issue on February the 3rd, 2020. The next hearing for the public to give, is given the opportunity to weigh in on that extension of additional debt is Monday morning, 9 a.m. Generally speaking, the public does not attend those hearings. If there is any comment, however, that will be recorded and the matter will come on for a final vote before the City Council that evening, next Monday evening, to determine whether or not it's appropriate for that to be issued. The Housing Authority asks for your approval of that, as does the developer. It's not exactly housekeeping because they are in fact over budget, but for reasons that we all know and understand. So I'm here tonight on behalf of the Housing Authority and the developer to ask the City Council to approve that additional issuance of debt in that sum that I just mentioned. Again, it does not in fact impact in any way the debt service of either the city or the Housing Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler.
Madam Mayor.
Great explanation.
Thank you.
Very well, very much in layman's terms. Any question or comment? As you said, sounds like a housekeeping, a very large housekeeping issue. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
We'll take that up on Monday. And that's all that we have under Housing and Community Affairs. So, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice Chair. We'll move on to Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee. That's chaired by Councilmember Samuel Davis. Your mic.
Item A, authorize the city legal department to give notice of the city intent to consider adopting an ordinance that revises the city corporate limits and ward maps to reflect the 2020 U.S. Decimal Census results. Ms. Hampton or Ms. Lynn?
Yes, sir. I'm going to pass this off to Ms. Woodward.
Thank you, Chairman Davis. This is an item that, because essentially, if we're trying to amend our corporate limits and ward maps, it's essentially a change to the city charter that requires publication, which is at least once a week for 3 weeks before the final adoption of the ordinance that would change our ward maps to reflect the 2020 decennial census results. We are working with our GIS consultants to redraw the map. We crunched some numbers, and it does seem like there are growth in Ward 3 that would would basically require that the ward maps to be redrawn so that we can make sure that we adhere to the to the voting and election laws, that there's one vote for every person, for one person, one vote requirement, essentially. Some preliminary estimation is that the city of Douglasville is at around 35,000 in population. And we will have more accurate numbers as we firm up our ward map and statistical calculations. If you have any questions, I can answer them for you. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Mayor?
I do. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Woodward. I know this is preliminary, and you'll come back and give us all the lines and all of that, but trying to make certain that each ward is equally as much as possible. Do we anticipate, I know when I was on city council years ago, the super ward was Ward 3, which is still, and I
Ward 3
represented that
super
ward, and then the south side, but now it's changed to downtown being a super ward and ward. Do we anticipate that we'll have another super ward, or is it going to, how is that looking? Can you give us any hint?
It looks like it's going to remain the same. We don't
Okay.
anticipate changing the number of council members or having a new super ward. We just need to balance out the population in each ward.
Okay, so if with an addition of 5,000 more citizens, that would not be cause to have another council member or two, or it's just, we'll just split up what we have and keep 7 council members and 1 mayor?
That is correct. The numbers don't support an additional super ward.
Or additional council members?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay,
I think you wouldn't want to go to an even number of council members.
No,
Council Watts?
two more.
Okay.
Council Watts, you have any?
No, sir. I can't think of anything offhand
Okay.
right now.
Councilman Adam? Mayor Pro Tem?
You mentioned Ward 3 grew since the last section. Did any of the other wards grow as well, or was it evenly across the board, or just primarily?
All of the wards actually grew. I don't have the percentage in front of me, but Ms. McCallum, do you remember which ward grew the most?
Ward 3 and Ward 1.
Okay, so those will actually shrink then, since they got more people. Physically, they'll get smaller to allow people, some people will then be shifted into other wards then.
You're speaking of the geographic boundaries of those wards would shrink, yes.
Yes, that's what I mean. It'll still be the same population relative to every other ward, but they'll physically get smaller. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Lynn, thank you. And do you have anything, Ms. Hampton? Okay, that's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
You have another item?
Yes, I have another item. Item B, authorize the city legal department of the city intent to consider an ordinance to amend the compensation ordinance to increase the mayor vehicle cash allowance and for the other purposes. Ms. Hampton or Ms. Lynn? Ms. Lynn?
Well, I'll just mention that per your 5 p.m. discussion, we will increase the mayor's, or we will add language into the compensation ordinance to increase the mayor's vehicle allowance to $800 per month, as well as change the language which allows the mayor's position to switch back and forth from a vehicle to a vehicle allowance to it being a vehicle allowance per the term of the mayor's office.
And that'll be advertised how many weeks?
Ms. Lynn can cover that.
Ms.
This
Lynn?
is also once a week for 3 consecutive weeks.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for the mayor and council? That's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. We'll move on then to Personnel and Organization Committee. That's chaired by Councilmember Chris Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have 2 items tonight. Item A, adopt a resolution to adopt a new pay scale and direct the Finance Director and Human Resources Director to implement the final pay study results after consultation with Evergreen Solutions, LLC. And we have Ms. Jackson and Ms. Tia Alston Bing.
Thank you, Councilman Watts. Chelsea Jackson, 6695 Church Street. Attached to your item, you do have a proposed resolution as well as the proposed pay schedule. So as you all know, one of the mayor and council goals for this year is to complete a pay study for the city of Douglasville, as well as implement it in the current fiscal year. An RFP was issued and Evergreen was selected as the consultant to complete the study. From preliminary to final results, Evergreen presented several options for the city. Working alongside the consultant, staff evaluated the current market trends and the current state of the market, as well as worked with the finance director, the city manager, and HR director regarding feasibility to implement the options presented. Market trends regarding salary have been steadfast on those employees currently in entry-level positions, and due to the current market and private sector, these positions have an average starting rate that place local municipalities, as well as the city of Douglasville, at a -% difference ranging from 10% to about 28% behind the industry. Most of the vacancies within the city are these entry-level positions, such as refuse collector. In order to ensure these positions are within a rate that can assist with recruitment and current retention of our employees, and to relieve compression issues that may occur within departments as it relates to improving the rate of these positions, staff is recommending an average 12% increase for employees. As it relates to this average amount, employees will not receive the same percentage across the board, and results from Evergreen concluded that employees such as our managers and directors are currently within that rate. But to alleviate any compression issues, there is a need to provide percentage increases to everyone. As an example, as it relates to refuse collector, if their starting rate increases to that proposed $15.20, then the sanitation driver must also increase based on their current experience and the starting rate as it relates to those market trends. Ms. Karen Callan presented about 2 weeks ago a performer. It was a very conservative performer, but it related to about 5 years down the line that shows that we can afford this increase in the pay schedule, as well as to alleviate that compression across the board.
Ms. Jackson, one question I had that I didn't think of earlier, the biggest driving factor behind this gap that we find ourselves in is basically the last year and a half COVID, because we did a pay scale study recently, I guess, a few years ago. 3 years. And I know we did a lot of catching up then, so I guess I'm trying to lay blame. The gap that we find ourselves in is the job market that we find ourselves in now. Is that y'all's understanding?
Yes, sir. As the current market trends, and as you said, as it relates to COVID, inflation everywhere, as it relates to gas prices, jobs and industry trends, yes, that's correct. Everything has increased in the last year and a half.
Okay.
And the consumer price index on average has increased about 7%.
We did cover this in committees, but anybody got any questions or comments? Okay.
Coach, if I could, I just want to make sure that the public and everyone understands that I believe the mayor mentioned something about some federal funds that we had and some positions that had not been filled, and therefore we had monies in the budget for that. But we're not depending on those funds. We're not depending on those funds coming in from the federal government, I hope, and we're not depending upon positions not being filled, therefore having money in the budget for that, for this to sustain us, because obviously that's a one-time shot with the federal government. And we may at some point, I don't think I've been here 10 years, and I don't think we've ever been at full complement of all of our positions being filled. But we're not depending upon any of that in being able to sustain ourselves in the future, because this is not a one-time 1 month increase and then take it back. This is from now on.
So that's correct. As it relates to any federal funds, we are not using federal funds to implement this. As it relates to any job openings that we had within the last fiscal year, that money that we did not use, it did currently roll over, so we will use a percentage to implement the remaining of the fiscal year. But as it relates to upcoming fiscal years, in the next 5 years, as Ms. Callan presented, that is other funds that we are receiving. So we're not depending on any of those funds as it relates to upcoming years.
Just want to make sure. Thank you very much. Appreciate that information and all that work that Evergreen has done and that you all and staff have done to prepare for this. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Adams made me think about something. I'm not the best with balancing a checkbook. I know how to spend, though. So the monies that did come in we were able to give a bonus or something. I know, don't laugh at me. We did do something for the employees that worked through COVID and those resources that had come in. What was that, City Manager?
We did several things. So you all increased your sick leave buyback program. You all also used some of your CARES Act funding to cover the cost for COVID incentive. I believe Ms. Austin Bing is going to make a report to you about that on Monday. You all also assisted with just recently a 5% increase to try to close the gap from where we are. So over the last couple of months, there have been several increases to salaries, wages, bonuses, and benefits that you all have provided to the employees.
Okay, thank you. So, you know, it's a balance, Mr. Adams. My husband does the other stuff. I just do the spending part. He balances the real stuff. I'm just saying. Okay, thank you. Oh, turn it off? Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you to staff and on their leadership, getting us to where we need to be competitive. And if anybody's out there who's looking for a job, the city's got jobs, so come on out. If I don't know how y'all feel about putting this on the consent agenda. We're missing a couple of council members, but I think we've talked about it and covered this a couple weeks ago. We all right with that? All right. Thank you, Ms. Jackson and Ms. Austin Bing. Item B, adopt an ordinance to revise the city's personnel policies and procedures to replace school resource officer, an obsolete position, with crime suppression unit for the eligibility of receiving flat pay, and to revise the reporting and investigation procedures for unlawful discrimination or harassment complaints. Ms. Austin Bing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tia Austin Bing, 6695 Church Street. This item is revisions to our current personnel policies and procedures. The first being that the Douglas County school system now has their own police force, and so when that was, I believe last year, Chief, when that happened, our school resource officer position became obsolete technically, and we no longer have a school resource officer unit. And so we want to update our personnel policies and procedures to replace that language with a new unit that the chief has authorized as relates to crime suppression, and to make sure that our policies reflect those special duty units correctly in our policies. So this will be replacing the school resource officer title and with the crime suppression unit, and we do have that unit currently operable at the police department. So we want to make sure our positions reflect what's in our personnel policies and procedures. So that is the first update to the PPP. The second update would be to ensure that our investigative procedures as it relates to unlawful harassment or unlawful discrimination resides with the Human Resources Director or my designees, and not have that responsibility lie with the supervisors. So it currently reads as the supervisors would do those investigations. However, we feel as properly trained staff to deal with those types of issues that come up in the workplace, that the Human Resources Director would be best suited to look into those types of instances, perform those investigations, and make recommendations to the department directors and or city manager. So we'd like to make an update to reflect that recommendation.
Okay.
And I'll take any questions if you have any.
And the red line version that shows the changes is on page 6, if you're looking for that. The crime suppression unit, Chief, is how many, is that one officer, is that several officers?
Right now it's one officer, but it will go up to maybe 5 officers that we have for the school resources. So we're just changing school resources since they all went over to the school system, and making that school resource unit that we had a crime suppression unit that will be able to go fight crime where we see crime data that we look at, and we'd be able to move them into that area to suppress crime and do other undercover type operation that we may see, that we may need to do. So I think it's, I left my phone at home. I'm looking for my phone, and I can tell you the exact number, but I think it's like 6. We had 6 school resources officers, and we were planning to move that way, but here's the deal, we down about 14. So we can't move in that way. We got one guy in there, but we got to keep patrol field, and then our other subsidiary departments, they work off the patrol.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chief. Any questions or comments about this item? Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Chief, you were starting to describe, and if you can just give me a little more. So the former SRO officers are going to move into this crime suppression unit. Are they going to work with the school system, or they're working in the city overall?
No. Our crime, SRO, we don't have SROs no more.
Correct.
Period. In the city of Douglasville.
Right.
They go into crime suppression.
Okay.
So when the school police got their police department, gave all that to them, say, bye-bye, y'all got it.
Right.
So now we going to make that element, we changed the name and put no personnel into a suppression unit that can fight crime where we see the data, where we need to move people into it. We could keep the patrol doing their function.
Right.
And this unit will augment patrols, special ops.
So they're not part of the zones and the patrol officers that we currently have. They're just they'll be aggregated to wherever they're needed. Right. And where the data supports, so we need more support to help fight crime.
Right, because what happened is patrol get into that, then you start taking patrol away from answering your 911 calls.
Okay.
So patrol can keep doing their 911 call system and doing burglary patrol. They may could do some burglary patrol, robbery patrol,
right.
Augment patrol, or special operations. So
okay.
that's the vision that I'm seeing for the special operations.
Well, thanks, Chief. That is very innovative, and really, it's just like primary care physician and a specialist. So you're really having another layer that's going to not just be a generalist, but really zone in on some issues. So thank you for that. Now, the resources, the money, I know when they were SROs, that the school system paid a portion of their salary. How is that done now?
Well, we currently have our special duty pay that they receive in addition to, it's a biweekly stipend that they receive for being on that unit, but I'm not sure about.
The school system did pay for, I think, 1 or 2 officers to go to the high school. Well, they don't pay that no more.
Right, so I'm saying
we taking all this.
So now it's under the police department.
Right, yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions or comments, council members? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I may have said county, but I meant school system and not the county. So I think I may have said that earlier when I was presenting.
Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, I think that I'd like to put this on the consent agenda, if that's all right with council.
I see nodding head to Mayor Pro
Okay.
Tem, Councilman Davis. Yes,
All
sir.
right. Thank you, Ms. Austin Bing. Thank you, Chief. And Madam Mayor, I am done.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. We'll move on to the next committee, which is Planning and Development Committee, that's chaired by Councilmember Mark Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome.
Planning and Development Committee has several items tonight. We'll begin with item A. Consider approval of an application for temporary business registration for Art Point Labs of Douglasville for Edie Swaggart Green at 3150 Golf Ridge Boulevard, Suite 101, pending approval of their application for a special land use permit for this use. This shows Mr. Shane Bird, but it appears that Mr. Anderson is going to handle this for us. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Okay, Ryan Anderson, 6701 Church Street. The applicant requires a temporary business license to operate a medical laboratory in a PUD zoning district with a GC base at 3150 Golf Ridge Boulevard, Suite 101. The applicant has already entered into a lease agreement and made significant investment in anticipation of opening a medical lab. This request is similar to the one that was approved by Council in December 2020. It was item number 20-622 for the Inkville Tattoo Parlor that was slated to open in the Arbor Place Mall. The applicant submitted an application for a special land use permit on December 3rd, 2021. The temporary business registration will last until the applicant receives approval of a special land use permit by City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Okay.
I want to make sure that you had mentioned, Mr. Anderson, a similar situation that we had in December of last year for a tattoo parlor. And my question would be, how long is this application requested for to have a temporary license? And what happens if they do not follow through with this once they get their temporary license?
Okay. The temporary license will be for 120 days. The reason why we would need extra time is because in January we don't have any hearings. We resume hearings in February. So I'm anticipating that they will get approval, but I can't speak for council, but they meet the requirements for a special land use permit.
Okay. And have the fees already been paid for that special land use permit to
Yes,
to be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's been paid.
I just have a concern, and I really wish and would like to see us be able to work with the public in order for this not to occur. Now, of course, one per year is not a lot for this to occur with, and we don't want to be difficult at all to get along with as far as a business needing a special land use permit. But the fact that they've already entered into a lease and have already started business, and with this type of business that they're operating, I don't think should supersede, in my own opinion, should supersede the need for what they have to have in order to operate legally. So give us a little information as to what exactly Art Point Labs does. And this, by the way, is Golf Ridge Boulevard, which is off of Chapel Hill as you go toward the Chapel Hills Golf and Country Club, toward the clubhouse, correct?
Yes, sir.
In one of the multi-story buildings there on the left.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What exactly does Art Point Labs do, and why does it need a special land use permit?
They will be drawing blood, and it's more than just a drop-off facility, so they would need a special land use permit from City Council to do that.
Because of that particular zoning or that type business requires one in any area?
Yes, because of their use in the general commercial zone.
Okay.
Anytime you have to draw blood or something, it requires a special land use permit.
Okay. Good enough.
The applicant is here.
Yes. Would the applicant like to say anything? I welcome that. Please come forward, give us your name and address for the record, and we'd love to hear from you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Madam Mayor and gentlemen, my name is Edie Swagger Green, and I am pursuing the license for Art Point Labs of Douglasville. We will be offering alternative, affordable testing for individuals that are perhaps don't have insurance or are underinsured. We hope to offer a cost-effective alternative for people in that situation. We would be servicing government entities, physicians, employers with drug testing, background checks, things of that nature. Hopefully helping government entities maneuver and manage COVID mandates, things of that nature.
Okay. Do you have experience in other areas in this type of work, ma'am?
I am a registered pharmacist, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm not sure what our requirements are for that type business, or what the state requirements are for that type business. I'm just trying to make sure that we have all the information that we need.
Understood.
So I'll open the floor to see if there are questions of council or Madam Mayor may have any question or comment. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you, Sora Swagger Green.
Thank you.
We apologize for, as the chair has said, for things to we don't want to be difficult to work with, and so we apologize for any inconvenience and confusion. And I understand, and just for general information, Ms. Swagger Green was the pharmacist at Walgreens on Fairburn Road for many years.
Yes, ma'am.
But when you decided to do this private entity, you moved in and thinking that everything was okay and filled out the paperwork, but once it was discovered that you would be drawing blood or that you needed a special land use permit, because there is a dentist office or something, and is it in that same area?
There is actually a dialysis center right next door to me.
Yes, ma'am. So it wasn't understood, and it was discovered later, and that's why we have to, have a special land use permit now. So it was just a confusion. So we apologize for the inconvenience and look forward to, if it's granted for the temporary
Yes, ma'am.
license, for you to come back in February to get your special land use permit. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none? Okay. Then we'll take this up on Monday for a vote.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
you.
much. Appreciate
Good
you
evening.
coming in. We'll go to item B. Refer to the Douglasville Planning Commission a proposed amendment to Articles 1, 2, and 6 through 12 of the Unified Development Ordinance, amending various provisions to correct Scrivener's errors, clerical approval authority, and provisions regarding the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, appoint the city engineer as the development official, and set a standard for granting a waiver of lapse of time requirement for reapplications. The application is by the city of Douglasville, and Ms. Lynn Woodward is going to help us with that.
Thank you, Councilman Adams. So this is part one of legal's attempt to update our UDO. Part two will be more substantive, considering different standards and taking into account of items that mayor and council have frequently asked developers about, and try to make sure that that is part of our minimum requirements in the UDO. For phase one, I've prepared the memo and the red line, so I'm just going to kind of summarize it. We are going to correct typos through this amendment, clarify what we mean by director, which is community development director. Sometimes this can cause issues even when you're not being very clear. And also, previously, we've not really had a development official, but we are going to clarify that that means city engineer will be our development official and will enforce I think it's Article 9 about natural resources, and whenever development official is mentioned. And we're also cleaning up some processes. Basically, we're trying to make sure that the UDO conforms to the reality. For example, for public hearings during the council meetings, the UDO says that we will not consider hearsay testimony, and we will require sworn testimony. We don't do either of them, so we're going to take them out of the UDO. We're also going to amend the public notice requirement that we require of ourselves, and track the state minimum requirement of publication in the legal ad and posting signage on property. However, if the community development director sees fit, they may but shall not be required to also post on website and mail to adjacent property owners. We are also proposing to amend the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. It's sort of a housekeeping item. Previously, the UDO is not very consistent as to the type of decisions that the Board of Adjustment and Appeals can review, but we're going to revise it to make it very specifically or clearly that the Board of Adjustment and Appeals will review the decisions of the development official and the building official. Previously, the UDO also requires that the board members of the Board of Adjustment and Appeals to have certain background, like they're required to have a real estate appraiser, a real estate agent background, or architect background. When we're doing away with that because it's very difficult to find someone to serve, much less find someone who checks off the background requirements. We're also going to revise, or rather clarify, the requirements and the lapse of time requirement. So generally, when an applicant has an adverse decision handed by the city council on rezoning, SLUP, and variance items, they are barred for 12 months from reapplying. It's very unique that the city of Douglasville allows that the application or waiver to be granted before the 12 months is up, but it has to at least wait for 6 months. I've done some research. I've not seen other cities having very clear factors that mayor and council would consider. And oftentimes other cities have a set and firm time lapse requirement of 12 months, no waivers allowed. So for clarification's sake, we're just going to require that if there is a change in the applicant's circumstances or plans, and it has to be a material change because this will also track another requirement that is also in the UDO in a different section, and the mayor and council may approve but is not required to approve the waiver if the waiver is in the best interest of the city's development or general health, welfare, and public safety, because nowadays changes are being made in a very rapid pace. So this gives you the flexibility to consider the city's development pace, to consider a waiver for a previously defeated application. The only, I would say, substantive change made to this revision of the UDO would be the temporary signage provision, but this is also trying to conform the UDO requirements to what's actually done in reality. Currently, this applies to feather flags. They are kind of like the rectangular flags that businesses have in front of their premises. It can cause some issues with traffic and safety, especially if there's not enough room for those to be reasonably secured, because, you know, the wind, depending on how strong the wind blows, it could fall down and obstruct traffic. So we are proposing to limit 2 of these feather flags for each business, and also you may have, every time you have a permit, you may have your feather flags up for 60 days, but after the 60-day expires, you're barred from application of the permit for 30 days, and after the 30 days, you can reapply for another 60 days. If you have questions about this particular provision, Ms. Ebony Jefferson, our Code Enforcement Manager, would be able to answer questions about that. If you have other questions about other provisions of the amendment, I will be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Ms. Woodward. I do have a question, and it's your last comment. Are you proposing that we change an ordinance that would prevent us from flying an American flag in front of our business without a permit?
That is actually a question for Ms. Jefferson, because we have a definition of what a festoon or a feather flag is, and that does not include the American flag.
Ms. Ebony, give us your name and address for the record. Talk to us, please.
Ebony Jefferson, 6701 Church Street. Good evening, everyone. There is a difference between a festoon and a flag. The ordinance speaks to flags, so that's not what we're speaking to, because you don't have to have a permit for that.
Okay.
What we are talking about are those tall feather flags that you see. You may see 5 or 6 at a property at one time, whereas we did not have a limit to the temporary signs. So if you have say for instance, a strip mall that may have 7 stores, if you think about it, if there's no limit restriction, all of those stores can get as many signs permits that they want. So we're trying to limit that amount to prevent oversaturation.
Yes, ma'am.
And to prevent safety hazards.
That's the question I want, that's the answer I needed to hear. Thank you very much. Other questions? Madam Mayor, did you have a question or comment?
I did. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Ebony. Attorney Woodward, you said a whole lot. I'm just trying to let it soak in. I did have a question about the Unified Development Ordinance, UDO. When didn't we adopt it like 2 years or a year ago?
It was after May of 2019, I believe.
So 19, 20, 21, and we have all these changes. Are you just going through with the fine tooth comb looking at areas, or is it based on if we've had some issues in development, or I guess it's a changing document, but it's supposed to be like the Constitution. It seems like we have a lot of amendments in a short time.
Sure, it's actually based on both. I actually did print out the UDO and review it from top to bottom because I frequently get questions from other staff members.
Right.
And when I read it, I think that it can be clearer.
Okay, so I know you're making it clear and simplifying it so that people can understand when they come to develop, but they need to have a heads up that is going to change, because developers and people that have come to invest in the community may have one understanding, and now we're changing it, just like the sworn testimony or hearsay or all of that. So I guess this is their time to understand that now, but when they come in, maybe just say, we've updated our Uniform Development Code ordinance till we have some changes.
Oh, yes, and there's actually a public hearing requirement. At this, tonight, we're asking that you will refer this item to the Planning Commission, and
great.
after it passes Planning Commission, and of course, we have also publish of legal ad, that kind of requirement as well to satisfy. So, yeah, but developers, applicants, citizens will have an opportunity to comment on it.
Okay, and I would recommend, even for city manager, that we kind of talk about this at our workshop in February, that maybe if we had some other suggestions or from the council to bring to the Uniform Development Ordinance or Code, so that we can, if there's some other issues that have been brought to our attention, to maybe.
Yes, ma'am, it's on the agenda, but I will remind you all, if you remember when we first adopted this, Ms. Littlefield mentioned to you all that you would have changes throughout the year because it is a living document. So I don't want you to think that we won't bring changes to you, because there will be, as development changes, as we have to shift in operation. So, some of these things that we're bringing are typos, certain things that probably should have been caught maybe early on, but a lot of it is just the practicality and how we work. But that item is on your strategic planning, as well as zoning procedures and operationally. Mr. Dotson has asked for that item.
How many
Thank you,
days we're
Madam
going to
Mayor.
be there? No, I'm just, thank you.
Other comments or questions? She has lulled you to sleep. Thank you, Ms. Woodward. Is there any objection for us placing this on the consent agenda for Monday?
I don't see any.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, we'll move on then to item C. Hold a public hearing and consider a request for a variance to reduce the required 15-foot side yard principal structure setback, section 4.08B of the Unified Development Ordinance, for a variance 12 feet, for remaining requirement of 3 feet on the east and west side of a lot, and 2, a variance to allow paving within the required 10 feet landscape strip setback in section 8.02E6A of the Unified Development Ordinance on the east, west, and north sides of a lot, 1.043 acres at 5621 Fairburn Road, Land Lot 52, District 1, Section 5, Parcel 18. Application by Integrity Construction, care of Ali V. Yago. Mr. Anderson?
Ryan Anderson, 6701 Church Street. The applicant is requesting variances to build a new construction on the lot, to store used tires out of the public site, and require variances to the side yard setback and to allow paving within the required landscape buffer. There are special conditions and circumstances that exist which are peculiar to the subject property that may affect the applicant's ability to develop the property as desired due to unusually small lot size, sloping topography, unbuildable rear yard, the Westmoreland frontage part, and storm water management issues such as a detention pond in the rear of the subject property. The subject property is a combination of lots with a double frontage. However, the Westmoreland frontage is unbuildable. The applicant wishes to make upgrades to the property in an effort to make the lot more aesthetically pleasing by constructing a new tire shop building to store tires inside. Also, it would allow the applicant to orient the tires and other items on the property in a more efficient and organized manner, which will result in an improved appearance of the subject property frontage on Fairburn Road. The requested variance would help alleviate the current eyesore. The subject property in question is located within a general commercial zone and surrounded by other general commercial uses. Due to the existing conditions, the subject property may not yield a reasonable return without the variance. The proposed variances will not affect the essential character of the neighborhood and will have a minimal effect. The proposed variance will help to improve the look of the subject property and will be compatible with the existing community. Once again, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this specific piece of property related to size, shape, and topography. The existing conditions have a drastic impact on the applicant's ability to develop the subject property in conformance with the current zoning regulations. As a result, relief is warranted. The variance is necessary for the applicant to develop the property in the most efficient manner as desired and is necessary as protection of property rights. A variance does not merely serve as a convenience to the applicant due to pre-existing conditions of the subject property. The applicant requires variance to improve the look of the subject property and to allow emergency vehicle access upon the subject property. Variances from zoning are normally granted in the cases of developmental hardship such as size, shape, uniqueness, environmental, topographical concern, and other development constraints are all acceptable reasons for a variance. The subject property is impacted by those development constraints, thereby affecting the applicant's ability to develop the subject property under normal guidelines. The applicant is
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Right. If the applicant is here and would like to come forward, give us your name and address for the record. We would begin by hearing from the applicant. Please understand that, as our mayor has mentioned, this is a public hearing, and she's given the time frame for each of the applicant and then anyone wanting to speak for or against that as to time limits. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name is Marvin Kennedy. I'm here in the reference, 3558 South Melissa Lane, Douglasville, Georgia. That's where we reside. I'm in reference to 5621 Fairburn Road. Vic's Tire Shop. The reason it would be feasible for the variance to be approved would be the setbacks from the east and west reduced by 12 feet. Right now, this was the standard, but we'd like to reduce it, if it's possible, to 3 feet for the landscaping purposes. And then the request for the back property, he owns that property as well. It's on Moreland, to be treated as a rear and not the front street setback area, because he owns that property as well. It's 3 adjacent properties. And then the other property, with the rear of the property, it's a runoff area, which is a huge retention pond in the back that WSA utilizes, as well as the SunTrust Bank, which is the adjacent business next to his location. They utilize his property to discharge water as well. So I think it would be feasible if we did that. This way he can aesthetically make the property look more pleasable with his new building, because it comes right up at 20. When you come up with 20, it's the first property you see is his property. So that building coming up right there will really add to the a nice look to the city of Douglasville, as far as the first, on the reveal side, the first building you see coming off the interstate, versus just looking at a vacant lot there. And then it's a very, we came to you a couple of years ago. I came to you in reference to a variance, which I was approved on. But with the pandemic came into play some years ago, and then we had some other issues with sicknesses and families and various things going on. So with a lot of changes we had to deal with. to try to relate to and try to situate ourselves into ideas. But our architect is here as well if you have any questions in reference to the setbacks and how they would afford the city the opportunity to get the building going and no longer.
Did you have something else, sir?
That's pretty much it, sir.
Okay. Let me ask a question first of all. Can you give us your name and address again?
Marvin Kennedy, 3558 South Melissa Lane, Douglasville, Georgia.
Okay. Are you representing Integrity Construction and Mr. Yago?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. I just didn't hear you mention that, and I was wondering what
I
your
apologize.
purpose was in this. So you're representing the applicant, Mr. Yago?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm looking at a picture, an overhead picture, page 4 of our packet, Council and Mayor, of 5621 and an adjoining parcel 5611. I'm assuming that what you're needing, what you're asking for is some variances. I understand that the two parcels have been combined, and you're asking for variances in order to place a new building on the 5611 parcel, but it be less than 15 feet away from the 5621 parcel. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could I ask, what is that on the adjacent property to the right of this picture, to the right of 5611? What is that piled up on that lot, and do you own that lot?
Well, right now, that was that's the old Taco Bell used to reside there.
No, beyond there, closer to I-20, the next lot over.
That was Georgia Power on a small piece of property to the right of that. It's an easeway for Georgia Power.
Okay. So you mentioned that for the last...
Georgia Power.
Is that theirs?
Georgia Power?
Well, they used to utilize that for a staging area in case of emergency. The park line trucks there. That was years ago.
Okay. What is it used for now?
And now it's no usage. It's not being used at anything.
Okay. So you mentioned something about a couple of years ago, you came to us for a variance and it was granted. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
I don't remember that. Is there any evidence of what sort of variance we might have granted then?
Yes, he did have approved variance, but it expired.
And what was that approved variance for?
For the similar request.
Okay. All right. Questions, comments that the mayor or council may have of the applicant or the representative? Yes, Madam Mayor, go ahead.
I do. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. And thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for coming and explaining. I still have a little bit confusion. So 511 is part of, you own that property?
5611.
Yes, 50, let me look at the numbers again. I apologize, 5611. So the property next to that, to the right, as Mr. Chairman has said, was, do you own that as well? And you said that was a staging area for GDOT. Do you own that, or that is not a part of your portfolio?
Oh, that's not part of our portfolio.
Okay. So in 5611, what do you propose to do with that property?
There's going to be a tire shop there, just for the purposes of just changing tires and upgrading people's vehicles as far as the tire wear and rims.
Now, Mr. Kennedy, are you aware of the concerns that are, and a lot of the violations that this business has already received?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm just I'll just be candid with you, I'm a little apprehensive about expanding this facility to do the same business when seemingly it has not been conscientious about, the business that's there now. We asked that the tires, we put an ordinance in place that the tires would have to go into a trailer. I'm not sure if that has happened, and it just seems like there are a plethora of tires, and it's always, there's a concern currently. So I don't know what we could do. And as you're saying, we're doing a lot of renovations in the city, and Fairburn Road is one of those things after the realignment from Highway 92. And when you come right off of I-20, it's that business is right there. So I'm just, stating my concerns that I don't want more of the same and have it to be more of an eyesore and continue to get violations because not being in compliance with the city ordinances and codes.
Well, the building, Madam Mayor, is a state-of-the-art building, and he's intended on putting up there. So you wouldn't be able to see a lot of things because they'd be hidden inside the building. Everything would be contained within the building. So it would no longer be outside. Right now, he's a small shop that he's working out of. And his employees, some of his employees have to work outside in different weather. Whether the new building, the proposed new building, they won't be working outside, they'll be working inside. So it'll be an interior process of things going on. So they'd be able to work out the weather and be a little more safely environment. And then at the same time, it'd be aesthetically pleasing because of the building itself. And you won't have all these like tires just scattered pretty much throughout the facility on the exterior.
Okay, and I think there's another business in the downtown area that, and I'm not sure if you own that as well, if it's the same company, but there's some other concerns with that as well. So I'm just saying, just be faithful of a little, so you can be master over much.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
if where you have now is not, following the rules, I'm just a little bit nervous to trust that it'll happen in the future. But
Yes,
I'm still taking into consideration what you're asking.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions of council? Yes, Mr. Davis?
Yes, sir. Other words, you want to build a new building
Yes, sir.
and to get your workers out of the cold and change the tires. A new building, you want to build next to that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What was you going to do with the old building?
Well, the building's going to be renovated into something different at a later date. Once we get the new building erected, then we're going to revitalize and rehab the old building into like a little, just a showroom area.
Okay, and what you going to do about storage of the tires?
Well, we have another location that we plan on moving and relocating the tires to.
In the city or
storage
out of the
trailers.
city?
It's in the exterior of the city. It's in the county area. And then we have tractor trailers that we can store tires into, that we own trailers that we purchased recently.
Okay, thank you.
Others? Yes, Coach, go ahead.
Did I understand, Mr. Kennedy, did I understand you right, that the tires are going to not be housed on either one of the buildings that we're talking about, the future building or the present building, but in a trailer somewhere else, did you say?
That's correct. And then we need certain tires, like only on new tires, we bring them in just when we need to utilize them on scheduled visits from customers and clients.
Yes, sir.
Then we would go and get those and have everything staged and install those on the vehicles. And then the old tires will be removed from their property.
Okay, when will that process begin as far as removing the tires, which are part of the code infractions? When will that start taking place? Is there a timeline for that, or?
Well, it is a timeline. We've already initiated some things. We already put things in the force and in effect. We already have the trailers already being utilized right now, even as we speak. But like I said, as soon as the city council approves the new building, the new facility, we can go ahead and move expeditiously on other areas.
Okay. Just one last question, and it was about, for council, it's on page 9, where it says at the top, variance application questionnaire, and there's question number 4, did the condition for which the variance is sought result from an action by the applicant? And it says yes, and then there's an explanation there, and I was just wondering about that. Maybe Mr. Anderson can shed some light on that. I'm not sure, as I read that, exactly what that has to do with this overall application.
Excuse me, sir. Which question, Councilman Watt?
Did the condition for which the variance is sought result from an action by the applicant? It says yes. This is on page 9. And it's something about pouring cement, contractor messed up or something like that. And I just was wondering what that had to do with all of this. It's a handwritten response to that question. It's not typed.
Is it in the package or is it in the staff report?
It's on page 11 of the package.
Oh, no,
A
sir.
variance
I don't-
application questionnaire.
I don't have the package, I just have the staff report. I don't have access to that. Is it on my notes, like on the site plan?
It's in the variance application, page number 11 of our packet. It's a questionnaire, question number 4, and I'll read it. Is that okay, Mr.?
Sure.
It says, did the condition for which the variance is sought result from an action by the applicant? And the answer is written in handwriting, yes. The applicant's subcontractor who formed and poured the concrete slab inadvertently placed the home too close to the road. The front porch slab measures 29 feet, 9 inches off the back of the curb on Military Way. I don't know that this even fits this application.
That shouldn't even.
So there's something out of kilter there.
I didn't take that into consideration. That was just something that was in the package. And I just put it in there. I didn't throw anything away. So.
Okay.
But it has no bearing on the actual application.
That's the answer to my question. I was wondering what it had to do.
It has nothing to do with the case. I just didn't throw anything away. I included everything in the package.
All right, that's all I had, Mr. Chairman, at this time.
Thank you, Coach. Other questions or comments? Madam Mayor, do you have another?
I do. Thank you so much. I appreciate that you let me have another opportunity. I believe, Mr. Anderson, that you answered that this is similar to, or the exact same that was requested from the council before. Could you give me the dates when we approved that?
I can get it for you and email you
On
tomorrow.
Monday? Okay.
I don't have the exact information, but it expired.
It
due to
expired?
time, yeah.
Was it within 2 to 5 years?
It was over 2 years.
Over 2
Yeah.
years?
They expire after 2 years.
Okay.
Yes, so
And-
I will send that to you.
All right,
tomorrow.
thank
All
you.
right.
And I wanted to have Ms. Ebony Jackson come forward from Code Enforcement, just to kind of give us an overview, just, an understanding about some of the concerns, so that we won't have these in the future, if this is granted.
Ebony Jefferson, 6701 Church Street. As it relates to the Vic's Tire Shop, I will say that they have made some changes since I've been here in 2019. He initially had a iron post with some type of opaque material. As it relates to the fencing on the right side of the property is what you kind of see when you come off the highway. He used to have tires stacked from the floor all the way to the ceiling, literally of the building, and going back to the rear part of the property, in which that has been decreased in an exponential number. He has begun to organize the tires into the storage container. Once we passed the ordinance, I did speak with him at length, and he began to put those in the containers. He has to organize them by number, size, all of the others. So he explained that to me as well. Most recently, what he did do was put up a wooden fence instead of having just the material on the iron post. So although there are small changes, they are big changes, because I can see that he is actively trying.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, Ms. Ebony. That's a good report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. If I might ask the question or a question of the applicant just a different way, and I'm going to contend this because it appears to me that there was a metal building package that was delivered to the property at some point in the past that is sitting on the lot to the right of 5611 from the picture that I see here, which I was assuming, I believe we had a builder come in, a contractor come in and talk to us about putting a metal building up for this particular individual. And my question was, is that the building package that is there now on the extra property? Can you answer that, Mr. Kennedy? Do you know? Yes, it is. It is. Okay, so that building package is 2+ years old, sitting on that vacant lot that is not owned by the applicant, correct? Okay. And so that would be the building package that would be constructed on the lot when and if all of this comes together, right? Is that correct? Okay. My question is, how long has, and this may be a question for Ms. Jefferson, we have other tire stores in the community, in the city, on this street that have been required to come under compliance for their used tires that are on site and how they have to be removed from the site within a certain amount of days or months. And it appears to me that this has not been done. Am I correct or incorrect?
As it relates to the movement of the tires, each tire place is constructed differently. On the Fairburn thoroughfare, you have your small location at the end of Church Street where we had to make concessions for them to store their tires. You have another tire, I forget the name of it.
U-Tire.
Yeah, where they have their tires stored in a trailer. In terms of movement, I'm not certain when they movement or how often they movement, but based on our ordinance, they can have up to 3,000 tires. That's what's in our ordinance.
Up to 3,000 tires in preparation
If you're a
of being
tire retailer.
retreading.
No, if you're a tire retailer.
Retailer,
A
okay.
retailer,
Okay.
you can have up to 3,000 tires. If you, it's against the rules to have 100 tires stored. That means like you may have them at your house or something of that nature. But if you're a retailer, you can have up to 3,000 tires stored on the property.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I will then give opportunity for anyone that may be here tonight, as far as a public hearing, to speak either for or against this item. Since it is a public hearing, do we have anyone to speak for or against this item? If you would come forward, give us your name and address for the record. And I believe, Madam Mayor, it's 5 minutes, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead,
My
ma'am.
name is Sarah Kennedy. My address is 3558 South Melissa Lane, Douglasville, Georgia. And I just wanted to add in favor of Vic Tire is that back in May, he ordered a building in the Austell area in the county to put up a building to store some of his tires, there for permitting for what they permit for. And we ordered that building, but due to COVID delays and it coming out of South Carolina, that building has not been delivered. It's supposed to go up December the 27th there out of the county, out of Douglasville area. He bought a piece of property out to build. The concrete pad has been poured, and we're waiting for that building to be put up and delivered on December the 27th. And he has waited that long because I've been the one going back and forth with the company to get it delivered. But the delays from COVID, none to the building, but they won't deliver until then.
Thank you. Others? To anyone else that would speak in either favor of or against this application for variance, please come forward. Okay. Seeing none, then we'll close that portion of the public hearing. Are there any other questions that council or Madam Mayor may have of the applicant or any other comments? Okay. Thank you all for coming in. We will take this up on Monday. We thank you for coming in. We'll go to item D. Consider a request for change in zoning from R2 Single Family Residential District Zone Property to CBD Central Business District for .46 acres at 8218 Dura-Lee Lane, land lot 831, District 18, Section 2, Parcel 40. Application by Joseph H. Fowler in care of Mr. Mark Allen Lee. Mr. Anderson?
Ryan Anderson, 6701 Church Street. The applicant narrative states that the purpose of this request is to develop a recording studio and a music school. The proposed development is consistent with the purpose and intent of the UDO. The current R2 zoning of the property is not actually reflective of its use as an office building. The proposed project can spur an increase in new development near the target area and serve as a catalyst for additional complementary commercial development. It is anticipated that during the upcoming comprehensive plan update that the city's land use map character area will undergo an update to be more reflective of the current conditions of the community. The applicant's request for a rezoning to CBD is a far more accurate representation of the current conditions of the community than the current R2 designation. The proposed rezoning is congruent with adjacent and nearby properties. The Douglas County School Barn and Eastside Elementary School are located to the east of the subject property, and other office uses is located within the immediate vicinity. The proposed amendment would adequately address new or changing conditions of the community. The subject property current designation as being part of a mixed-use design character area does not properly reflect the changing conditions of the community, mainly because it does not list CBD as one of its preferred zoning designations. The community activity center character area would be more representative of the actual changing conditions of the community, and it lists CBD as one of its preferred zoning districts. Staff anticipate that the subject property will be updated to be included in a community activity center character area during the next comprehensive plan update. The applicant's requested rezoning is feasible and far more reflective of the current zoning of R2. The subject property abuts a community activity center character area to the north and west. The proposed zoning amendment changes the existing zoning of R2 to a more specific CBD zoning for a recording studio and music school. Despite the current character area recommendations, CBD would be a more optimum zone for the subject property. Ordinarily, the applicant's request could potentially constitute a spot zoning, since this requested zoning to CBD is not part of the future land use map recommended zoning conditions, but that is more of an issue with the map not being more reflective of the current state of the community. Once again, staff anticipate that the subject project will be part of a future overlay district, which would include the CBD zone as a preferred zoning designation. The upcoming comprehensive plan update will better align the current conditions of the community with the land use map character areas designation. If approved, staff recommend the proposed recording studio be affixed with the latest soundproofing technology, the hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. daily, and no loitering on the premises. The applicant is here.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Fowler, are you going to speak concerning the Lee family here?
I will. Good evening, everyone. Joe Fowler, Post Office Box 49. This is Mark Allen Lee, the son of Bud Lee, his dad, who owned this property forever. Also with us is Sheila Adams, the realtor of the property. And on her way here from downtown Atlanta for over an hour and a half is Rashida Whitaker, who is the new tenant. Everybody knows this property. It's just under half an acre. It's the building that was built in 1973 by Mr. Lee. It's 3,584 square feet. It was zoned R2 at that time. Mr. Lee's family has owned it for 48 years. It was originally, get this, used as a health spa. The only one that may know that is Joel Dodson, who used to work out there.
You're stealing my thunder, Joe. I did too.
And so did Mark Adams. In Joel's case, it didn't do much good. But
It's Chris.
in 1982, the use changed to the CPA office of Mr. Jack Gamble, who rented it for his accounting practice for decades until he died just under a couple of years ago. It's been vacant since Jack passed away. The practice was sold, and Mark asked Ms. Adams to assist in finding a new tenant, which she did. She's not yet here, and it may be you'd want to hear from her on Monday evening if she doesn't come, but the proposed use is slightly misstated by me as a music recording studio. It's actually a music school that Ryan did mention. I will tell you this, P&Z recommended unanimous approval when they heard from her. She has a daycare center, and she routinely teaches music lessons, singing and piano playing, and she spoke eloquently about the demand there is for young folks to be trained in these particular areas. I wish she were here to communicate it. The notion that she provided was that this is a demanded use, and she believes that she can provide it there. It will be fitted out with the appropriate recording information so these students can benefit from it. It's not going to be a place where people who know how to play the guitar go in and try to record something and cut a record. This is a place for a music school that will have recording studio capabilities. There is the note that staff recommended that the latest soundproofing technology be used, and that is representative of what I initially put there as a recording studio, but it's much more than that. It is a music school. The hours of operation will be something like all day long, regular business hours, not 7 a.m. to midnight as was suggested by the condition. It's probably kids coming in after school, getting lessons that would be provided by the tenant. The conditions are no loitering on the property and those other two things, and she obviously consents to those. The staff report did note that there's a future land use plan issue with respect to this site. It's going to be changed so that this use will be, the CBD will be reflected in what is proposed for change to the future land use plan. The staff does note that it is consistent with the other aspects of the city's ordinance, and we would request approval. There's not much more I can say about it. She spoke very long and eloquently about all of that. If you want to defer, or perhaps, Mr. Chairman, you want to keep it open for further comment from her on Monday evening, we'll try to make sure she gets here on time.
That would be great. So I guess, Mr. Fowler, my question is, or my comment would be that Mr. Dodson, who of course was there many years before we were actually, forever how many, 2 or 3 times we worked out there each. In the years that we were members, we were actually in a residential area working out in a health spa.
And it's all changed, and this the use that's been going on there is consistent with other uses in the area, and it just happens not to fit in the comp plan. It's going to be changed. We think this is an appropriate rezoning. The use is not going to be what is initially suggested by the way I described it. When you hear from her on Monday, what you'll see is that it is a sensible use, it's a needed use, and it certainly would fit in the CBD ordinance.
That's fine. We have no problem with that. Counsel, Madam Mayor, comments, questions? Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Fowler, and to the Lee family. I appreciate the explanation because I did get just a little concerned when you said the hours would be from 7 to 12 a.m. and it was a music studio. But it's really a music school that has recording capability, but it's not for someone who, if I want to come in and make an album. I was thinking about, and you said soundproof, so that's great as well, because I know there's a daycare center there. Yes, and, I think you've answered all my questions. I was nervous about noise and all of that, and if someone were to come in and try to record a CD or something, if they would be there till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And
suggest slaughtering and all those things. The Planning Commission had the same concerns when they heard from her. It went from everybody's curious and concerned, as you are, Madam Mayor, to unanimous approval when they heard from her. So we'll make sure, to the best of our ability, that we've been watching our watches for an hour and a half. So thank you very much.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Yes, one second, Coach. Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Madam Mayor, I work in studios now, and as long as they soundproof it like it's supposed to be with the thickness, and studio that I work in is in the subdivision, those people never complain because you can't hear.
Okay, good.
Because everything is soundproof, and the rooms look like a freezer. You just got a glass up. It's all compelled.
Okay, good.
Coach, did you have a comment?
So what it's been used for, that property, what it's been used for all these years
General business.
is allowed under the R2
CPA.
It should have been some office rezoning. Councilmember Watts.
It should have been rezoned, but after it was built in R2, it's just a non-conforming use that's been carried on for, 40, 50 years.
So what's around it? I can't tell by the pictures.
Eastside Elementary School is across the street.
Right.
There's an apartment complex behind it, am I correct?
It is, yes, sir.
There's a daycare center to the north of it. To the
Okay.
south of it is other commercial, and then, of course, the transportation department for the.
So it makes
for the county.
sense.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
All right, thank you very
Others?
much.
To the Lee family, Mr. Mark, I've never met you, but your dad was a friend of mine, a fine fella, and we miss him. And we appreciate you carrying this on in his name. Good idea.
Right. Thank
Okay.
you, everyone.
We will take this up on Monday then, and if the applicant or the lessee wants to come in and make a presentation, we'd welcome that by all means.
She'll arrive on time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll take that up on Monday. Item E, consider request for approval of a development plan for Somerset at Timber Ridge for 83.299 acres at the intersection of Timber Ridge and Presley Mill Road, located land lot 54, District 1, Section 5, Parcel 2, plans dated September 14th, 2021. Application by the Revived Land Group, LLC. Mr. Anderson?
Ryan Anderson, 6701 Church Street. The applicant, the Revived Land Group, is seeking development of a residential project per city of Douglas UDO Section 10.07 for property located at the intersection of Timber Ridge and Presley Mill Road. The subject property was recently approved for a change in zoning from R2 to PUD for 83.299 acres. The rezoning was approved with 17 conditions of zoning, including a maximum unit count of 238 units. The current elevations indicate that the structures will be comprised primarily of hardy shake, hardy plank, brick, board and batten, and stacked stone. The proposed site plan shows 238 units with a combination of residential densities. There will be 156 42-feet units on 26.73 acres with a density rate of 5.84 acres. 25 50-feet units on 7.27 acres with a density rate of 3.44 units per acre. 57 60-feet units on 38.137 acres with a density rate of 1.49 units per acre. There will be 952 parking spaces, 2 driveways, and 2 garages, with 33 amenity parking spaces for a total of 985 parking spaces. The site plan indicates access to the site from Timber Ridge and Presley Mill Road. The site plan highlights all 17 conditions of zoning approval. City staff has reviewed the application and has determined that the proposed plan meets development requirements of the UDO.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Appreciate that information. I think you will note, Counsel, Madam Mayor, page 6 of 18, the zoning conditions that were negotiated, and I was out of town during these meetings.
Yes, sir.
Are actually on their plat, the 17 items, and I assume that this gentleman would like to speak as the applicant or the applicant's representative. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. Neville Allison, 3500 Lennox Road, Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the managing partner of the Revive Land Group. Happy to be in front of you guys again after spending so much time with you in the fall. Ryan did a great job with our summary. The site plan should look familiar to you because it's the same site plan that was approved at zoning. The elevations are the same elevations you saw at zoning. We've just followed the checklist now of the detailed development plan, added those all to the application that's before you, and we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here and being patient with us. Yes, Coach, you had a comment or question?
When I was looking at this earlier, I could not, I know the 17 conditions, but I couldn't find them. The page that has conditions only has 14 listed, so I was wondering.
If you go to page 6 and look at the right bottom left of that plat, you'll see the zoning conditions.
I see them.
And there's 17 of them there listed individually.
Okay.
And the 14 that are shown there on the ordinance, I believe that was just, some of them were combined, and there were 14 conditions that were passed on the ordinance. So we took the actual sheets from the zoning ordinance we received from staff and made them a separate page on the development plan.
And the 900 plus parking spaces is based on basically 4 parking spaces, the garage, 2-car garage, and then 2 driveway spots.
Correct, plus guest parking.
Yeah, okay. Because I know some folks worried about that, but I mean, that's, you know, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Others? Question, comment? Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to repeat, I think I might have said the last time, I'm encouraged that looking at this development plan, that I don't see a single cul-de-sac, which is good. And I just wish that the garages weren't quite as prominent as they are on the facades, but you've done a reasonably decent job of articulating them so that they don't look like traditional car garages. So it works with the scale too. So it's good to see that. So thank you. Glad to see that you work with us on that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? All righty, we'll take this up on Monday for a vote. Thank you all for coming in.
See you then. Thank you.
Item F, last item, consider request for revised plat approval for 8555 Bowden Street for the purpose of subdividing into 2 lots for .8 acres at 8555 and 8559 Bowden Street, land lot 16, District 15, Section 5, parcels 0016015D009 and 0016015D102. Application by David Ferguson. Mr. Anderson.
Ryan Anderson, 6701 Church Street. The applicant, David Ferguson, is requesting final plat approval for the purpose of subdividing into 2 lots for .8 acres at 8555 Bowden Street and 8559 Bowden Street to facilitate the sale of a single-family residential structure. In the past, prior to zoning in the city, there were instances whereby more than 1 home was built on a single parcel of land. This request basically split the parcel into 2 parcels to allow for the sale of one of the homes.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. So the 2 homes are existing there now?
Yes, sir.
But they were built, whenever they were built, on 1 parcel?
Yes, sir.
And he's just requesting a revised plat approval to separate those so that one of those can be sold on its own lot?
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Questions, comments? I see none. I thank you. We'll take that item up on Monday. Madam Mayor, good news to everyone's ears. I'm sure that's all that we have tonight in that committee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. You did a wonderful job. We appreciate you too, Mr. Anderson. I'm going to ask Mayor Pro Tem to take the next couple of committees, regardless of the vice chair. So Public Improvement and Beautification Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have no business under the Public Improvement and Beautification Committee at this time.
Thank you, sir. Public Relations Committee, Mayor Pro Tem.
We have absolutely no business under the Public Relations Committee at this time as well.
Thank you so much. Public Safety Committee, chaired by Councilmember Samuel Davis.
Yes, ma'am. I have one item. Item A, adopt an ordinance to amend the imposed maximum speed limit for city streets and roadways. Chief Sparks.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Mayor, this is a document from the state that give us the authority to run radar on all the city streets. And we had to do some cleanup on some of the verbiage and some of the grammar. Everything is okay now, so we just need your signature and turn it back over to the state.
Okay. Any questions from the council? Mayor and council?
No.
If not, I'd like to put this.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm noticing, and I'm not sure who this question should be directed toward, on the chart of city streets, we still have Creekwood Drive listed at 30 miles per hour, and I know that our intent is to change that. Is that just because it's a historic document in that sense?
We'll talk to you about that on Monday. There are some restrictions that we have to adhere to due to what the chief is mentioning right now that may prevent us from being able to do that. But we do have that item for 5 p.m. discussion on Monday.
Okay. That would be good then. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll take this up on Monday. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. We'll move on then to the next committee, which is Recreation, Culture, and Tourism Committee. That's chaired by Councilmember Chris Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have no business tonight in Recreation, Culture, and Tourism.
Thank you, sir. Technology Committee, chaired by Mayor Pro Tem Terry Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's no business under the Technology Committee at this time.
Thank you, sir. You are the vice chair for Transportation Committee. Would you please take that committee?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We
You're
have two
welcome.
items under the Transportation Committee at this time. The first is to authorize the mayor to sign a supplemental agreement with Georgia Department of Transportation to allow for supplemental funding for the State Route 92 and CS 532 from Brown Street to McCarley Street Improvement Project. Ms. McCowan.
April McCown, 6701 Church Street, project manager. During committees, you heard a little bit more about this project. This is a supplemental agreement between GDOT and the City of Douglasville for the authorization of additional funding for this project, which is locally driven. The local match on this project is $199,000. The federal match is $798,000 and some change for a total project cost of $997,000 and some change. All of the funding will be pulled from SPLOST, and what you have in front of you is a supplemental agreement to the project framework agreement between, of course, the city and GDOT.
Thank you, Ms. Khan. We discussed this in committee earlier. Any other questions or concerns about this that have to be brought up now or forever hold your peace? If there's no objection, I'd like to put this on the consent agenda for Monday. Okay, so moved. The next item is to authorize the mayor to sign task order number 24 as part of the on-call contract for professional services with AECom Technical Services, Inc. to perform pavement condition rating and management services of the city's roadway. Ms. Mann.
Alicia Mann, 6695 Church Street. What you have before you right now is the proposal and the proposal agreement from AECom. This is to update our pavement condition rating and rehabilitation recommendations to prepare for the 2022 SPLOST. As you can remember, this has been done in 2017 when, for the 2016 SPLOST, they let us know what roads need to be repaved and the severity. So staff just wants to be prepared for the most up-to-date information for SPLOST project planning. If you have any questions.
Well, let me ask you, I don't know if you've been here long enough to know, is this the same system that they were using? We had Mr. Roberts had explained the system they were using the first time, the grading, I think it was a 1 through 5 or something like that. Is there it's basically the same system they used before to grade the roads? Okay.
But what I would tell you is some of the streets have not deteriorated at the same rate. So some streets that they might have designated a 6 3 years ago, 4 years
State your
ago.
name and address for the record, please.
I'm sorry, Greg Roberts. But some of those streets are probably still a 6, believe it or not. But there are some that were a 7, probably a 5 now. And so that's when we discussed it a few weeks ago. I felt like it was a good time to do it as we prepare and plan for some other things over the next year or two, in addition to some of the SPOS funds that are left, to go ahead and get those streets reassessed and then regroup them top to bottom for the ones that are remaining to be done.
This is not going to be all the city streets, though?
I'm sorry?
This is not all the city streets that are going to be
It will,
evaluated?
yeah,
Or
they
be all
will,
of it?
yeah, they will look at they will regroup every street, including the ones we've paved in that time. Those will just go back to the bottom of the list because they'll have a higher rating.
So anybody who's watching knows that their street will be inspected at some point
Yes.
within this contract? Okay.
Yes.
Any questions, or Madam Mayor?
I do. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Ms. Mann and Mr. Roberts. So when do we anticipate having the report completed so that we'll have a ledger of the streets? And
go ahead.
So they anticipate by the end of April of 2022, just before the summer.
Okay, great. Very good. And we can apply for LMIG and all of that as well, Mr. Roberts?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that on the next council round. And if you have any streets to recommend for the 2022, if you'll get them in, we're going to concentrate on the LMEG for 2022 and get those done. And so, but we have SPLOST funds available to do some other streets as well come summer.
Okay. And are we collaborating with Water and Sewer Authority? Because, you know, they had some streets that they were doing as well as the county with our joint streets.
Now,
Or they connect?
Are you referring to WSA as far as the utility work they're doing?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we do have communication with them, but sometimes they have events that are outside their control as well. Yes, for example, Church Street, they're within probably 60 days of starting some pipe bursting projects on Church Street.
And Duncan, where they did that little area, well, I'm not going to do specifics.
Okay.
We'll talk about that later.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any other questions or comments from council? Hearing none, if there's no objections, I'd like to place item B as well onto the consent agenda on Monday. Okay, so done. Madam Mayor, that's all we have under the Transportation Committee at this time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice Chair. I appreciate it, Mayor Pro Tem. Do we have any other business to come before council tonight from the elected body? I do have a couple. I wanted to thank the police department and Ms. Ebony for helping to get some of the no trespassing signs for businesses that we had with some of our people in the community that were trespassing in those areas. And so thank you for contacting some of those businesses that were out of the state, that were, lived in housed other places, so that we can get no trespassing signs on those properties. The other thing was Councilmember Nicole Miller was not able to make committees tonight, but she did ask me to ask for a status report from the city manager or engineering about the parking deck. I know I brought that issue up, and I talked to the chief last week. We had those, a car hit other WSA vehicles and private vehicles doing the donuts on the top of the parking deck. And I was trying to make a recommendation to either have arms when you come in, or before you get to the top level, some access just for city employees. And I know you were talking to Mr. Marcus and just wanted an update, and she asked me as well for an update.
Yes, ma'am. We'll have a report for you on Monday morning,
okay.
Monday at 5 p.m. What I will note is outside of something temporary, there's really not going to be a possibility to construct something permanent in the parking deck, inside the parking deck, to deny access to the upper level areas. So I'm not going to play engineer. Mr. Marcus is an engineer, so he'll explain all that to you at 5 p.m.
Okay. And we did, just for citizens, we did place signs. Mr. Roberts has signs that are placed throughout the parking deck, as well as cameras, that the police department has put cameras up. So we're just, I guess we'll wait for the report on Monday, and I'll report back to Councilmember Nicole Miller.
Yes, ma'am, and I can follow up with her. Any incident that we typically have in the parking deck, I mean, it's we typically alleviate that issue with law enforcement when less than 24 hours. I think the incident that happened the last week, that suspect was apprehended within 24 hours. We do have patrol that patrols the area frequently. I know that you had mentioned the possibility of having someone there on guard. The reality is for us is staffing, the possibility of doing that. We really don't have, as the chief mentioned, we're 14 down. In order to staff it, you're not talking one person, you're probably talking at least 3 to 4 people because of shift work. So Mr. Thompson will bring something to you to take a look at to see if you would like to move in that direction. Right now, unfortunately, we're responding in a reactionary manner, but that is our best option with the resources that we currently have.
Okay. So I'll be putting my thinking hat on. I asked the council as well to maybe, if there's another position we can, outside of the police department or just something else, because in a reactionary situation, we understand within 24 hours, that's a great record, but people who live in the area, either, on Price or certain streets, if, I've been getting concerned or complaints that they hear people driving through at 2 o'clock in the morning, speeding, and it's just, they're hearing a lot of activity in the parking deck, even though the cameras they're gone by the time, they've already disturbed someone and they're awakened in the middle of the night.
Mayor, the real way to restrict the parking deck is to pay for parking. I mean, that's the reality of it. If you want to restrict the parking, you're going to have to put gates on the front and in the back. Staffing, from the staffing standpoint, whether it's law enforcement or, someone who's not certified as a law enforcement officer, you're still talking bodies. And one body is not going to do it for around-the-clock surveillance. You're really talking that you're going to have a multitude of people. And I just don't think for what we would pay, I mean, the chief would know what a security officer would pay and what we could afford that we can satisfactorily provide that service. But literally to block what we're talking about. And the skateboarders, you're not going to block the skateboarders with arms. They're going to continue to go. But vehicles, that's the only way to do it, is basically restrict access at the entry points.
Wow. Okay. So we'll talk more about it. And Coach, I'll let you talk. I just, again, it's something heavy on my heart, and it's embarrassing to have guests, as I talked to Miss Jennifer, that come to the conference center and park there. And like we did last week, their cars got hit because someone rode through and sped out of control and hit 3 or 4 cars. Councilmember Watts.
The top deck, you say that's, we have cameras up there.
Yes, we do, and they're monitored by conference center staff and the police department.
And I know that, stuff that's happening at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning is going to happen before we can respond or react to it. But I'm just wondering, with the lights and everything up there, license plates aren't captured and...
No, we're apprehending. We're just in a reactionary standpoint. We're just not catching individuals on the spot.
While they're doing it.
Because someone's
Okay.
there, correct.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we're still getting them later on.
That's correct.
If they're up there spinning out. And we have signage up there that this area is under
Surveillance, yes.
So they're just not very smart and they don't know how to read? Is that what the problem is? They get up there and they see it's under surveillance and they're going to do it anyway, I guess. So anyway, but appreciate law enforcement taking care of that. I think that's all we can do. I mean, I don't see us blocking it off and as the solution. But anyway, I know we'll talk more about it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for what's already been done. If you don't mind, City Manager, reaching out to Councilmember Miller to give her an update.
Yes, ma'am, I will give her a call.
Thank you. Any other comments from council members? Oh, Councilman Davis, did you have something? No. Okay. All right. Well, we will continue to go through the agenda. Updates from city staff. Our city attorney, Mr. Joel Dotson.
No business.
Thank you, sir. Our staff attorney, Ms. Lynn Woodward.
No business, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Our chief of police, Chief Gary Sparks.
No business, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Our city manager, Ms. Marcia Hampton.
Just a reminder about executive session.
Ooh-wee. Okay. Thank you so much. I know we have one more meeting for the year, so we're trying to take care of the citizens' business. Comments from citizens and delegates. Now is the opportunity for citizens, if you've sustained the meeting and you'd like to address us, please come forward. You have 5 minutes to talk to us about any business germane to the city of Douglasville or potential business. No? Okay. Well, not having any takers, as Councilmember Davis can say, we do have an executive session, so I will open the floor to a motion, open the floor for a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss cybersecurity and property acquisition. Thank you so much, Councilmember Adams. Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem. It's been properly moved in second to adjourn into executive session to discuss cybersecurity and property acquisition and negotiations after a short recess. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We're into executive session after a short recess.